So to be honest, Wolves feels very much like The Instigators, which was also out on Apple TV quite recently with Matt Damon and Casey Affleck. The problem with that is a problem with this. Ultimately, it just doesn't feel very satisfying. Yes, you've got Clooney and Brad Pitt up on screen as a couple of high-end fixers, the guys who turn up and they'll get rid of a dead body for you if you're in that sort of a jam. But the problem is that there isn't really that much story other than this connected to the film. But with Wolves, it's one of those things where you sort of watch it and you go, actually, this should be like so much better. Why am I not engaged with this film? And John Watts, who has obviously made his money through the Spider-Man trilogy and no doubt will carry on to do so with Marvel in some capacity, doesn't work for me. Right, so I'm going to give Wolves, which is currently doing the rounds on Apple TV, a 3 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale, and I'm being generous as well, because there's some serious star power on screen. Why isn't it working? You won't be able to figure it out, neither could I. And on that note, so for every Boogie Nights, The Departed or Pain and Gain that you've got in the Mark Wahlberg back catalogue, you get travesties including the recently released Netflix original The Union with Halle Berry, which is an absolute Cleveland steamer. Fortunately, A Family Plan falls into the former category and is actually one in which Wahlberg is fully engaged and committed. He stars, as I said, alongside Michelle Monaghan, whom I can remember only from Mission Impossible 3, although I'm sure she's done a number of other films, as well as Kieran Hines, who was obviously in the Harry Potter trilogy, and he turns up, he's a character actor of note, and he can either phone it in or deliver, and in this case as well, he delivers. The point is, it's quite a formulaic thing. He gets uncovered, he gets discovered through a social media photograph, and suddenly he has to go on a road trip with teenagers, a son and a daughter who despise him equally because he's just this downtrodden father figure, and a wife who is dissatisfied because he's not particularly spontaneous. So all the pieces are in place. So what we then get is a common garden road trip formula. But this is the interesting thing about A Family Plan. It's really pretty good. So A Family Plan is good because it is inventive. The script is excellent. It's got some decent, not even one-liners, but the comedic situations, and the way that they take conventional tropes like road trips and people being pursued by assassins and take it and twist it is really, really clever. So much against my better judgment, I'm going to be giving A Family Plan 4 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale. Why? Because Wahlberg can actually sell a movie, and there is a movie star in there somewhere, I swear to God, when he wants to apply himself. There's a decent ensemble, the writing's solid, there's no other reason other than that not to recommend it. So on that note, so the thing to remember going into this film is that this is not going to reinvent the wheel in terms of what thrillers can do and what they're capable of. Yes, In My Sleep has got a distinctive 80s look and vibe and feel about it. Philip Winchester is very much a young Nathan Fillion as Marcus, this sort of like masseur who works in a massage parlour, but also happens to have this sleepwalking condition. He also has childhood trauma thrown in for good measure. So the thing that makes this slightly more sophisticated than audiences might expect it to be is the fact that there is a genuine story, as I said, working its way underneath all the superficiality. Yes, there is an 80s vibe and an 80s look, and that's going to lead people down the garden path of thinking that this isn't a quality piece of work. But the thing about it is that you've got subliminal imagery being used within the dream sequences and the flashbacks as Marcus is experiencing, how as he's reliving or discovering different things within the story itself. And it's, again, there are serious Memento vibes thrown in, and you do get sort of a body double sort of feel to things. Right, so I'm going to be giving In My Sleep a 3 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale, because ultimately, yes, this might adhere to a number of different conventional cliches and stereotypes within this particular genre, but it does it quite well, and it's inventive and it's sophisticated and it's sort of disarming in its sort of like in its simplicity, but ultimately it works, and it's worth watching, and it's worth investing in, and it's enjoyable if nothing else. So adapted by Nick Stafford from the Michael Moore Pogo bestseller, War Horse really is a theatrical phenomenon. The puppetry involved from the High Spring Puppetry Company, a South African-based firm, really brought the concept to life back in 2006, and to see them in the flesh on the stage telling this story, which is essentially about a horse which happens to be from the Isle of Wight, which is where I'm sitting, who goes to war, is conscripted into World War One, and fights alongside the British, fights alongside the Germans, and it has sort of this interconnecting sort of parallel friendship which is running between Albert Narracott, played by Tom Sturgis, and Joey, this thoroughbred puppet which is controlled and created and brought to life by three puppeteers. There are actually four horses on stage at various points in the production, and it really is one of those things you have to see to believe. That you really do buy into these puppets, you buy into these characters, and it happens within the first 5 minutes. Yes, you can clearly see that it's, you know, you've got people inside it, and you've got a person who is you know, controlling the ears, controlling the head, and but the way it all comes together in such a fluid motion, ultimately you buy into this pretty much from minute one, and to the extent that when you actually have the curtain call at the end and the horses come back on, these horses, they get rounds of applause and you feel an emotional connection. And it's one of the most weird things I think I've ever experienced in terms of connecting to something and fully investing in a play, in a theatrical performance. So it goes without saying that I'm going to be giving War Horse, which is playing at the Mayflower Theatre in Southampton till the 19th, a 5 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale. It really is up to the hype. It really lives up to the sort of like the praise, the adulation and the plaudits that have been, should we say, plastered on it over the years. So yes, the clue is in the name. This is A Quiet Place Day One. Yes, we go back all the way to the beginning and find out the origin, the arrival, and exactly how this all happened. So although A Quiet Place Day One is essentially marketed as a horror movie, and it does have some effective jump scares in it, this is still very much a character study. It's still very much a character piece, and it trades on uses the same cards as the first two in terms of it's very focused on family, it's very focused on relationships, and it's focused on grief, on loss, and these are very universal truths. They're very human emotions, very triggering things within the film, and the relationship between Quinn and Nyong'o within this, because there's very little dialogue because by default they can't actually say anything. So what you need are two character actors who can hold the screen without the need to fall back into to have that safety net of excessive dialogue that they, because they can't emote or because they can't use the camera effectively to sort of, you know, to convey their feelings and to get the audience on board. But with these two, you've really hit a home run, I think. So I'm going to be giving A Quiet Place Day One 3 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale, because although it's a good movie, it's not quite up to the same standard as the first two. Simple as that, really, to be honest. But it's a good companion piece. So the accomplishments of Alex Garland are many and they are profuse. He is a writer, a director, a novelist. He wrote The Beach, which was then adapted into a film by Danny Boyle and starred Leonardo DiCaprio. The thing about Annihilation is it does explore sci-fi, it does explore genetics, it does explore evolution, and it does it in a really clever way. Yes, this stars Natalie Portman, and you've got Jennifer Jason Leigh, and you've got Oscar Isaac, so you do have a profuse amount of people in there of a decent character acting quality, not to mention Tessa Thompson as Portman and Jennifer Jason Leigh and Tessa Thompson and the remaining crew make their way into this thing called the Shimmer, which is ultimately it's sort of like this sort of alien environment, this alien landscape where genetics, where trees and animals and human beings have all sort of merged together to create these hybrids. It's a really interesting sci-fi sort of shall we say offshoot segue, and it really does open up the arguments around how much we should be interfering with genetics, how much we should be trying to perfect or modify or sort of like change things for our own will, and it's these aliens who sort of come out of nowhere and forcibly do this. So based on the evidence that I've just given you, we think I'd be giving this a 5 out of 5. I am going to give this a 4 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale, because as much as it opens up debates and it explores different ideas, and it's really clever and it's really inventive, and it's sort of, you know, it's very sort of 2001: A Space Odyssey in its sort of like pacing. Some people might not like that. Some people might not be able to get behind it. It can be quite slow. It can be quite ponderous. There are the moments of, shall we say, confusion, and the ending is just a little bit too opaque for its own good. But none. So the importance for me of this documentary is the fact that you get to see a lot of different sides of American culture and how they respond, how they interact, and ultimately how they behave in the face of such, shall we say, radical change. It is also a poignant sort of... I don't want to compare it to sort of trains, planes and automobiles, but it's got that sort of tonal quality to it. It isn't a comedy. It's sort of a dramedy of sorts, and there is a genuine poignant friendship and connection between Harper Steele and Will Ferrell throughout this sort of road trip across Americana, if you will. So obviously the interesting thing about Will and Harper is the fact that it opens up the conversation and debate and discussion around the trans community, transgender, and the moral, ethical, and the emotional impact of making those decisions, and that is a hugely important thing culturally, I think, and that is ultimately at the heart of this documentary, and it really does. It handles the subject matter and also and respects Harper Steele and everything that she represents to the trans community, and also within the film as a whole. So I'm going to be giving Will and Harper a 4 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale. I think it's got a lot to say. I think it's an important documentary, and I think it does it with poignancy. I think there's a great deal of respect, and it feels very grounded and very honest, which not every documentary could be said to say or do the same thing. So on that note, so this is Anna Kendrick's feature film debut, and it really is quite interesting. Interesting because it's quite a contentious and, should we say, delicate subject matter in terms of something maybe that a woman would naturally gravitate towards a female director. It is a challenging subject matter. It's done in a very measured and confident way. There's a certain degree of maturity behind the way the film is put together and shot. The thing that makes Woman of the Hour so interesting is obviously it's a very female-centric story, and it focuses primarily on Cheryl, Anna Kendrick's character, and her experience and her sort of brush with this serial killer in the 70s. It's an in-depth and very, should we say, carefully orchestrated piece of filmmaking. So as much as Woman of the Hour does focus on the serial killer elements in terms of the violence, it's done with a degree of delicacy and subtlety, and everything's done pretty much at a distance, apart from the finer points, which are there purely just to hammer the point home, I think, in terms of the split personality of Rodney O'Kayla, played by Daniel Zavato. And he does over-egg the pudding just a touch with his creepiness, but Kendrick is clearly in charge of her subject matter. There is there are certain comparisons you could make to Zodiac, the David Fincher masterpiece, in my opinion, and also Seven, although maybe not so much tonally with regards to the last example. So I'm going to be giving Woman of the Hour 4 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale. Not only is this a very interesting example of the serial killer subgenre, but also, more importantly, it's a very much a female-centric led perspective on the whole thing. So on that note, I'm going to dive into my trailer and impress upon you the need to watch this film. And so it is, you've reached the end of the video review for Woman of the Hour, which is currently streaming on Netflix and is directed and stars Anna Kendrick. So if you've liked this video, then give me a thumbs up. Failing that, you can always just drop a comment in the comment box below and I will respond. And finally, just subscribe so that every Tuesday and every Saturday when I drop another one of these videos literally into your lap, then you'll get a little notification. You can pop in and watch or listen to as much or as little as you'd like, and then go about your day. In the meantime, check out the rest of the channel and maybe pop over to the Patreon page. Take care. Cheers now. Bye.